This economy isn't built to withstand collapse, and neither are we. We've grown dependent on instant heat, app-ordered meals, and digital security. But when the grid fails, trucks stop, and power's out, it won't be your gadgets that save you. It'll be the skills your grandparents called just life. In this video, I'm sharing 10 forgotten skills that kept families alive through wars, blackouts, and economic crashes. From making soap to storing food without a fridge, these are real-world practices you need to know. Subscribe now because this knowledge could be priceless when it matters most. 1. The clay pot stability hack that could save your dinner. Picture this: a cracked clay pot, forgotten and discarded behind the porch, its edges chipped and its surface dull. Most of us would see trash, but in a blackout, that broken piece of pottery could be the difference between a warm meal and going hungry. When the power goes out, cooking becomes a challenge. Pots wobble on uneven coals, flames flicker unpredictably, and water boils over, turning your dinner into a disaster. But your grandmother, she had a solution for that. She'd take garden clay, mix it with water, and add small shards of broken pottery to create a thick, smooth paste. This wasn't just a random experiment, it was survival science. She'd press the mixture around the base of her cooking pot, forming a sturdy, even layer. Once it dried, it became a homemade anchor, stabilizing the pot on uneven surfaces and insulating it from the direct heat of the coals. No tools, no screws, no fancy designs, just a simple, effective solution born out of necessity. This clay anchor wasn't just practical, it was a lifesaver. It kept pots steady through shifting coals and gusty winds, ensuring meals were cooked evenly and safely. Families who relied on this method during blackouts or harsh conditions often found themselves better off than those scrambling to make modern appliances work without electricity. Relief shelters have even reported that families who knew how to cook reliably in such conditions fared far better during extended power outages. In a world where we rely on gadgets and apps for everything, this skill is a reminder of the power of simplicity. When Wi-Fi dies and modern tools fail, a clay-anchored pot stands firm. It's a testament to the ingenuity of past generations who didn't wait for instructions or fancy solutions. They shaped their own answers with their hands, their knowledge, and their resourcefulness. So the next time you see a broken clay pot, think twice before tossing it. It might just be the key to your survival. If your grandmother ever showed you a trick like this, share it in the comments. Your memory could be the lifeline someone else needs. 2. The aluminum foil secret your grandma knew. You unwrap your sandwich, crumple the foil and toss it in the trash without a second thought. But your grandmother, she treated aluminum foil like it was a treasure. To her, it wasn't just a disposable wrapper. It was a tool, a shield, and a survival essential. She knew something we've forgotten. Aluminum foil isn't garbage. It's gold. After every meal, she'd smooth out the wrinkles, fold the foil neatly, and stack it in a drawer near the stove. Each sheet had a second, sometimes third life. She'd use it to wrap leftovers, line the oven, or even sharpen scissors. But her ingenuity didn't stop there. When the gas was out, she'd cook entire meals in the fireplace using foil. In winter, she'd cover broken windows with it to block drafts or reflect heat back into a cold room. And in a pinch, she'd use it to shield electronics from static or plug cracks where cold air seeped in. In a collapse, that thin sheet of foil becomes invaluable. It reflects heat, insulates food, and serves as a barrier against the elements. When windows shatter or the temperature drops, foil can make the difference between staying warm and freezing. And when food cools too quickly, it can mean the difference between a hot meal and a cold, unappetizing mess. The invisible danger of heat loss is something most people don't notice until it's too late, until their breath fogs in their own living room or their body starts to shiver. Your grandmother didn't save foil because she was poor. She saved it because she was prepared. She lived with an awareness that nothing should be wasted, especially not something as versatile as aluminum foil. In a world where supply chains fail and prices spike, that mindset is more valuable than ever. So the next time you flatten a piece of foil, stop and think. It's not just trash, it's a survival tool waiting to be used. If your grandmother ever had a habit of saving things we throw away today, let us know in the comments. Her wisdom might just inspire someone else to be better prepared. 3. Turning ashes and fat into survival soap. When you see ashes in a fireplace, you probably think they're just the remnants of a fire. something to be swept away and forgotten. But your grandmother, she saw something entirely different. To her, ashes weren't waste. They were the foundation of survival. When the fire burned low and the food was gone, she saw potential in the gray dust left behind. She knew how to turn it into something powerful. So she'd start by saving the ashes, sifting them carefully to remove debris, and collecting the fine powder. Then she'd run water through the ashes, letting a brown liquid trickle out slowly. This was her lie. No labels, no warnings, just knowledge passed down through generations. The next ingredient was fat, but not the kind you'd find in a grocery store. She used bacon grease, beef drippings, and other scraps that most people would throw away without a second thought. Mixing the lye and fat was a slow, deliberate process. She'd stir the mixture for hours with nothing but a wooden spoon and her instincts, watching as it thickened into a paste. It wasn't pretty or perfumed, but it was effective. She'd pour the paste into trays, let it harden and slice it into bricks. This wasn't the kind of soap you'd find in a spa. It was utility soap, designed to keep you alive. It cleaned wounds, washed linens, and scrubbed cracked hands. In a world without doctors or stores, it was a first line of defense against disease. The invisible danger of bacteria is something most people don't think about until it's too late. A simple cut can turn serious in the blink of an eye, and without proper hygiene, infections can spread quickly. That's why this skill wasn't just clever, it was life-saving. Your grandmother didn't panic when supplies ran out. She didn't rely on stores or handouts. She used what she had and got to work. If your grandmother ever had a trick like this, share it in the comments. Her knowledge could be the key to someone else's survival. For earth oven, the ancient reheat method that defies modern limits. Imagine a world without microwaves, electric stoves, or even gas burners. For most of us, the thought of reheating food in such conditions feels impossible. But for your grandmother, it was just another day. Long before modern appliances, she relied on the earth itself to keep meals warm and ready. This wasn't just a clever trick, it was a survival skill honed over centuries. The earth oven, as it's called, is a method as old as humanity itself, and it's just as effective today as it was thousands of years ago. Here's how it worked. After a meal, she'd dig a shallow pit in the ground. Stones were heated in a fire until they glowed red hot, then carefully arranged around a clay-lined space. Green leaves were layered on top to add moisture, and the food was nestled in, wrapped securely to retain its flavor and texture. Finally, the entire setup was covered with earth, sealing in the heat, and then she'd walk away. Hours later, the food would emerge steaming, warm, and perfectly reheated, not by electricity but by the natural power of the earth. This method isn't just a relic of the past. Archaeologists have found evidence of earth ovens being used for over 10,000 years, from the Americas to Australia. It's a testament to human ingenuity and our ability to adapt to the environment. And in a world where the grid fails, storms knock out power, and modern conveniences become useless, the earth oven stands as a reliable, collapse-proof solution. It doesn't rely on wires, batteries, or fuel. It relies on the heat stored in the earth itself. The invisible danger of cold food is something most people don't think about. You won't feel the effects of hunger immediately, but as your body loses energy, the shivering starts and your strength fades. During prolonged blackouts, families who knew how to use earth ovens stayed warm, fed, and focused, while others scrambled to find alternative ways to heat their meals. This method isn't just about food, it's about survival, comfort, and resilience. So, the next time you're faced with a cold meal and no power, don't panic. Look to the ground beneath your feet. Build an earth oven, cover it, and let nature do the work. Because your grandmother didn't just feed her family, she kept them warm, hopeful, and alive. 5. Turning ashes into life. Grandma's secret for thriving indoor plants. To most people, the ashes left behind in a fireplace are nothing more than waste, something to be swept up and thrown away. But to your grandmother, those ashes were a lifeline. During harsh winters, when the ground was frozen solid and fresh food was scarce, she turned to her indoor plants for sustenance. And to keep those plants thriving, she used a secret weapon, ash fertilizer. Here's how she did it. After a fire burned down to embers, she'd collect the cooled ashes, sifting out any large chunks or debris. Then with a careful hand, she'd sprinkle a thin layer of ash over the soil in her pots. It wasn't much, just enough to dust the surface, but that small amount of ash worked wonders. Rich in potassium and calcium, it provided essential nutrients that kept her plants healthy, strong, and productive. Over time, the soil became less acidic, the roots grew deeper, and the plants flourished. This wasn't just about keeping a few herbs alive. For your grandmother, those plants were a source of vitamins, fiber, and even medicine during the long cold months when fresh produce was a luxury. Parsley, mint, sage, and chives, all of them thrived under her care thanks to the nutrients in the ash. And in a collapse when grocery stores are empty and seeds are hard to come by, knowing how to nourish your indoor garden could mean the difference between health and hunger. The invisible danger of neglecting your plants is easy to overlook. Weak stems, thin leaves, and poor growth might not seem like a big deal until you realize your body needs the nutrients those plants provide. Your grandmother understood this. She didn't see ashes as trash, she saw them as a way to sustain life. And in a world where modern fertilizers are expensive or unavailable, her method is more relevant than ever. So the next time you clean out your fireplace, think twice before tossing those ashes. Scoop them up, dry them out, and use them to feed your plant. Because your grandmother didn't just burn firewood, she turned it into a promise of green, growing life. 6. Homemade cleaning spray, Grandma's recipe for a germ-free home. In today's world, staying clean often means relying on store-bought sprays, antibacterial wipes, and chemical-laden cleaners. But what happens when the shelves are empty, the trucks stop running, and your dollar can't even buy a bottle of bleach? For your grandmother, this wasn't a hypothetical question, it was reality. And she didn't wait for a label to feel safe. She made her own cleaning spray, strong enough to kill germs, cut grease, and keep her home spotless through the toughest times. Her recipe was simple but effective. She'd start with white vinegar, mixing it with water in equal parts. Then came the secret ingredient, lemon or orange peel. Whatever was left over from the kitchen, she'd soak in the vinegar for days, sometimes a week. The natural oils from the peels infused the mixture, adding antibacterial properties and a fresh, clean scent. For tougher jobs, she'd add a pinch of baking soda for scrubbing power or a drop of dish soap to tackle grease. The result? A homemade cleaner that was cheap, natural, and incredibly effective. This wasn't just about keeping the house tidy. Cleanliness for your grandmother was a defense against sickness. Germs spread quickly in close quarters, especially when medicine is scarce and doctors are hard to find. A clean home wasn't just a luxury, it was a necessity. The invisible threat of bacteria and viruses is something you can't see, smell, or feel until it's too late. But with her homemade spray, your grandmother kept her family safe, healthy, and protected. In a collapse when commercial cleaners are no longer an option, this skill becomes invaluable. Knowing how to make your own cleaning solution means you're not dependent on supply chains or big brands. You have the power to keep your home safe with just a few simple ingredients. So the next time you reach for a bottle of store-bought cleaner, ask yourself, could you do it without the store? Because your grandmother could. And if she could, so can you. If you've ever learned a trick like this from her, share it in the comments. Her wisdom might just inspire someone else to take control of their home safety. 7. Salted citrus cleaner. Grandma's secret weapon for a sparkling home. Most of us peel an orange or lemon, toss the rind in the trash, and never think twice about it. But for your grandmother, those citrus peels were far from garbage, they were gold. Long before cleaning sprays lined store shelves, she had a natural, effective formula that cut through grease, neutralized odors, and kept her home spotless. It wasn't just a clever hack, it was a survival skill that worked when nothing else did. She called it her salted citrus cleaner, and it was as simple as it was brilliant. Here's how she made it. She'd take the peels of oranges, lemons, or grapefruits and pack them tightly into a glass jar. Then she'd sprinkle in coarse salt, filling the spaces between the peel. Once the jar was sealed, she'd place it on a sunny windowsill and let time do the rest. Over the course of days, the salt would draw out the natural oils from the citrus, creating a fragrant, briny solution. The peels would soften and the jar would fill with a golden liquid that smelled like sunshine and zest. When it was time to clean, she'd pull out a peel, dip it into the brine, and scrub away. Countertops, cutting boards, cast iron pans, nothing was off limit. The natural acids in the citrus cut through grease and grime, while the salt acted as a gentle abrasive. And if the brine ran low, she'd simply add more salt or fresh peels to keep the cycle going. In times of scarcity, this wasn't just a clever trick, it was a lifeline. When soap was hard to come by and stores were closed, this homemade cleaner kept her home safe and sanitary. The invisible danger of a dirty home is easy to overlook. You don't see the bacteria multiplying on your counters or the germs lurking in your sink until it's too late. But your grandmother didn't wait for illness to strike. She used what she had, citrus peels and salt, to create a cleaner that was as effective as it was sustainable. So the next time you peel an orange, think twice before tossing the rind. Save it, salt it, and let it brew. Because in a world where convenience fails, creativity wins. 8. Wool insoles. The warmth trick that outlasts the cold. When the power goes out and the temperature drops, The cold creeps in slowly, starting at your feet. It's not just uncomfortable, it's dangerous. Cold feet can lead to frostbite, hypothermia, and a host of other problems that are hard to fix when the grid is down. But your grandmother had a simple, ingenious solution: wool insoles. These weren't store-bought or battery-powered. They were handmade, crafted from scraps of wool, and they worked better than any modern gadget. Here's how she made them. She'd take leftover wool fabric, maybe from an old sweater, scarf, or blanket, and fold it into layers. Sometimes she'd add a bit of felt for extra cushioning. Then she'd cut the layers to match the shape of her shoe's sole and slip them inside her boots or slippers. The result was a natural, breathable insole that trapped heat, wicked away moisture, and kept her feet warm even in the harshest conditions. Wool is a remarkable material. It retains heat even when it's damp, making it ideal for cold, wet environments. It also creates tiny pockets of air that act as insulation, keeping the cold at bay. Your grandmother didn't need heated socks or electric blankets. She trusted the natural properties of wool to do the job. And it worked. During winter power outages, families who used wool insoles reported staying warmer and more comfortable than those who relied on modern power-dependent solutions. The invisible danger of cold is that you don't notice it until it's too late. Frostbite starts in your toes, creeping upward until it affects your entire body. But with wool insoles, the cold stays at your feet, far from your heart. So the next time you come across a pile of wool scraps, don't throw them away. Cut them, layer them, and turn them into insoles. Because when the heater fails and the nights grow long, those simple wool inserts could be the difference between comfort and crisis. Nine-leaf insulation, nature's answer to winter's chill. As autumn leaves fall and pile up in your yard, it's easy to see them as nothing more than a nuisance. But to your grandmother, those dry, crunchy leaves were a gift from nature. When the power went out and the cold seeped into every corner of the house, she turned to those leaves for warmth. This wasn't just a quirky idea, it was a survival strategy that worked when modern insulation failed. Here's how she used them. She'd gather clean, dry leaves and layer them under blankets, tucking them between sheets or even inside clothing. The leaves created tiny pockets of air that trapped body heat, acting as a natural thermal barrier. She'd also stuff them around door frames and window crevices to block drafts, effectively sealing the house against the cold. It wasn't fancy, but it was effective. Those leaves turned her home into a warm, insulated haven, even in the dead of winter. The science behind this is simple. Heat escapes through floors, walls, and windows, but a thick layer of leaves can slow that process. It's the same principle that makes foam insulation work, but without the cost or environmental impact. And in a collapse, when store-bought solutions are out of reach, this natural method becomes invaluable. Some survival shelters have even reported that families who used leaf insulation stayed warmer and more comfortable during power outages than those who relied on modern heating systems. The invisible danger of cold is that it sneaks up on you. You don't notice the heat leaving your body until you're shivering. Your joints ache, and sleep becomes impossible. But with a layer of leaves, you can slow the cold and hold on to your warmth. So the next time you're raking leaves, think twice before bagging them up. Save them, use them, and let nature help you stay warm. Because your grandmother didn't wait for someone to sell her insulation. She found it in her own backyard. 10. The survival blueprint hidden in plain sight. You've made it this far, and that truly says something significant about you. While many might casually scroll past such information, shrug off the subtle warnings embedded within everyday observations, and perhaps assume their comfortable lives are indefinitely guaranteed, you've chosen a different path. You've actively paid attention, allowing these insights to reshape how you view your home, reassess your daily habits, and reevaluate the resources readily available to you. It's a shift in perspective, seeing familiar things in a new light. What we've shared here isn't merely nostalgic storytelling or a quaint recollection of the past. It's a robust survival blueprint, tested by generations. These invaluable skills weren't born from an abundance of luxury or convenience. Quite the opposite. They were meticulously carved out of sheer necessity, honed in homes that often lacked basic plumbing, in kitchens devoid of modern gadgets, and through winters that showed no mercy. As our complex modern systems incrementally grow more fragile, as power grids falter unexpectedly, and as essential prices continue their unsettling rise, these old ways are not becoming obsolete. They are, in fact, becoming more vital and valuable than ever before. They are not outdated methodologies to be dismissed as archaic. They are timeless principles, adaptable and enduring. So let's confront the hard truth. You don't necessarily need more sophisticated technology or the latest smart device to navigate an uncertain future. What you truly need is more ingenuity, more resourcefulness, and a deeper connection to practical knowledge. You need to tap into the wisdom of those who came before us, the generations who not only survived, but thrived without the myriad conveniences we now often take for granted. If you've managed to glean even one tangible insight or actionable skill from this discussion, please share it generously. Because the knowledge you pass on today, the simple practical wisdom you disseminate, could very well become the lifeline someone else desperately needs tomorrow, offering a tangible path forward when modern solutions fail.